Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on The Birth of Merlin, which is an apocryphal play, probably written by William Rowley, but maybe Shakespeare contributed to it a little bit. And today we're going to hear from Aurelius in Act 1, Scene 2. Now, Aurelius is the king of the Britons. We haven't met him yet. Really quickly, in Act 1, Scene 1, we met two different sets of lovers. Both of the women in these pairs are the daughters of Donobert, a British lord, and Cawdor wanted to be with Constantania, and they decide, yeah, cool, let's get married. And Edwin wants to be with Modesta, who is like, maybe not, because I really would sort of rather be a nun. So by the end of the scene, we have one marriage that's probably going to happen, and we also have Modesta, who wants to pursue a spiritual life as opposed to a more earthly life. And we also know that there is a hermit that is going to be coming to visit the town very soon, and Modesta wants to meet with him because he's a very spiritual man. So Act 1, Scene 2 starts out, the king had called for all of these lords to come and be around him because the Saxon delegation is on its way. The Britons and the Saxons have lately been at war, and the Britons seem to be winning. So the Saxons are coming, and a bunch of the lords were told that they need to be there with the king. So we've got King Aurelius, we've got Donobert, we've got Edwin, we've got Cawdor, we've got Gloucester, we've got this whole contingent of people, and the king is like, have we heard anything about my missing brother? Which is another plot thing that we didn't know about just yet, but apparently his brother Arthur has been missing for some time. And Donobert is like, no, we haven't really, but maybe that's a good thing, because if the enemy had captured or killed him, they would have told us about it by now, like they'd be gloating. And Aurelius says, that hope alone sustains me. Nor will we be so ingrateful unto heaven to question what we fear with what we enjoy. Is answer of our message yet returned from that religious man, the holy hermit, sent by the Earl of Chester to confirm us in that miraculous act? For 'twas no less our army being en route, nay, quite o'erthrown, as Chester writes, even then this holy man, armed with his cross and staff, went smiling on, and boldly fronts the foe, at sight of whom the Saxons stood amazed, for to their seeming above the hermit's head appeared such brightness, such clear and glorious beams, as if our men marched all in fire, wherewith the pagans fled, and by our troops were all to death pursued. So what he's saying is he's hopeful that his brother is still alive since they haven't heard about his death. But then he switches to, have we heard from the hermit? And tells us a little bit about why this hermit is so impressive. Like the Britons were in the middle of a battle and very likely to lose, but then the hermit shows up and starts marching towards the Saxons, who are also referred to as the pagans, whereas the Britons are the Christians. And he was emitting this light so much that the Saxon soldiers all thought that the British army was on fire marching towards them. So they all turned and ran and therefore got killed, and that's how the Britons gained advantage in the war. So shortly after this, they find out that, yes, the hermit is going to be coming and has sent a note with a little bit of a forewarning, like sort of a, yeah, you may be winning, but don't maybe be too nice to your enemy because things aren't really buttoned up yet. And they're like, okay, that's interesting, and interesting that he sent a note instead of just like showing up, but whatever. But then the Saxon delegation shows up, and they come in, and they are led by the daughter of the Saxon general, whose name is Artesia. And instantly upon seeing her, Aurelius falls in love. He thinks that she's just the most beautiful thing that he's ever seen, and he can barely talk to her. And she's like, you know, I'm here on behalf of the Saxons, and we hope to make peace with you. And he's like, of course we're going to make peace with you. You know, you can just like split up your camp when you want and send back to your brother or send back to your dad that everything's cool and blah, blah, blah. And the lords that are standing around are like, what is he doing? Why is he being like, what? He needs to be firmer. Like there are captives. We just beat them. Why is he being like this? And Donobert says to Artesia, he's like, you know, thank you. You can go ahead and you can take this message back to the Saxon camp now. And Aurelius is like, what are you talking about? We need to, she's come all this way. At least we can give her dinner. And like everybody else that was with you too, like we'll put everybody up so you can get some rest and, all this. And the other lords are like, he's crazy. He's lost his mind. I don't understand what's going on here. And finally, they do turn and say a couple of things to him as well, like, come on, you gotta step it up. These are the bad guys. Like, why are you inviting them to stay? And he's like, you know what? I'm not listening to any of you. Artesia, maybe we should get married. Yes, we should get married because that will solidify this truce, that will solidify this peace between the Britons and the Saxons if we join sides by you marrying me. And she's like, well, I'm not really the sort of person that's going to say no when a king asks me to marry him. So they decide that they're going to get married, and the lords are just beside themselves with this is the dumbest idea that they have ever heard of. And the hermit did enter in all of this as well. And King Aurelius was like, oh, Mr. Hermit, check it out. I'm going to marry the daughter of mine enemy. And even the hermit is like, this is a bad idea. I would not recommend this. This is not going to turn out well. And King Aurelius is like, well, what do you know? And after a little bit of that back and forth, then they all leave to go have dinner, except for the hermit, at which point Modesta comes in and she's like, oh my God, it's the hermit. She has a little bit of like a fangirl moment, and she goes up to him. She's like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but can I talk to you for a second? And he's like, of course, what's up? And she's like, I'm in love with virtue. How can I lead a virtuous life? And he's like, well, are you a virgin? And are you, he asks her a couple other questions about her piety, her honesty, her faith, things like that. And he deems her to be worthy of leading a spiritual life. So he's like, come on, I've got some things I can teach you, some things that we can talk about. And she's like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to get to dedicate my life to God. And that is the end of Act 1, Scene 2. So they like to cram a lot in there, and I'm almost feeling bad that I limited the monologues to 12 lines of text or more, because there's a couple 10 and 11 line monologues in there that would have broken this up a bit. But it means we're going to get through the play kind of quickly, that there aren't a ton of monologues in it. But we do have loads of intrigue going on. None of the romantic pairings so far are working out very well. And, he is marrying the enemy's daughter, and she just went with it. Maybe she has ulterior motives. What do you think? I don't know. Come on back tomorrow for more, and we'll find out. Mwah.